Hey everybody, it's Javier Balderramos. I have Doug Gordon here. A lot of people may know or may not know who Doug Gordon is, but he is a CEO. He's a five-time award winner. He's a coach consultant. He's an international speaker. He's a trainer. He's a healer. He is a best-selling author. You can see in the background, Charge Yourself Up for Success. Thank you for coming on, Mr. Doug Gordon.
I mean, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for getting up so early on a Saturday morning to meet and chat with me here over in Ireland.
Yeah, it's no problem at all. So a lot of people don't know, but you've worked with a lot of people. You've worked with Dell, you've worked with Samsung, Salesforce, the rugby club, Laniers, is that correct?
Leinster Rugby Club, yeah.
Letster, excuse me. As well as Facebook, you worked with film stars, sports stars, and so many more.
Absolutely, yeah. I even was working with one of Ireland's top rugby players just this week. So trying to help and mentor him as well.
So may I ask, like, what is it that you do? Like a lot of people, they hear the word CEO, but it's just kind of a catchy thing. What actually is a CEO?
Well, in my perspective, the CEO isn't always the chief executive officer. It's actually the chief energy officer. And that's trying to bring the energy into the organization and also collaboratively get everybody to work together towards collective goals. But in my case, I have a small consultancy, corporate training company, and coaching company. I have a few people working for me, but obviously it's mainly about myself. And I work with companies, which obviously you mentioned, I work with individuals helping them with different types of things. So I have like a Buddha side and a business side. So my Buddha side, I'm a trained mindset coach, trained mental health practitioner, trained in 5 modalities of healing to master teacher level. And I utilize all the learnings there to help people get over trauma, depression, suicidal tendencies, all that kind of stuff. And did even during the pandemic while we were stuck indoors, over 3,000 hours helping people in that kind of side of things. On the business side, I do corporate training, executive coaching, keynotes, and everything like that. And I've been working with the people you mentioned, many or more as well, doing stuff like leadership training, but where it's conscious leadership, creating inspiration and trust. Sales training, where we're trying to really improve our communication and presentation skills, which I also do as well, help people to present like a pro. On top of that, then productivity and performance, workplace well-being, and many other things to try and help people in terms of performance, in terms of well-being, and reducing stress as well.
So, what are some of the awards that you have won, if you don't mind me asking? If you can go into more detail about it, because it's not every CEO is an award winner that come on the show.
Yeah, sure. So when we were stuck indoors in the pandemic, there was a really good app called Clubhouse. And we set up on Clubhouse, there's like stages you can go on to. And there's some amazing speakers on there. People like Brian Tracy, Grant Cardone, Lisa Nichols, Jay Shetty. They all came on. And they all did little speeches and talks and try and add value to people while they're stuck indoors. And this is what I was doing. And we put a mental wellness, mental health room together. It was a mix of psychiatrists, psychologists, mindset coaches, even a neuroscientist, and then a load of kind of healers as well. And we would sit as a panel of maybe 6 to 8 people every single week. In fact, quite more than just every single week. And then once a month, we'd do 14 hours straight trying to help people in shifts. And during that time period, we were helping lots of different people coming up with suicide, depression, all that kind of stuff. And I was one of the main guys on there. And as I said, I did about 3,000 hours, helped a lot of people. That brought them into one-to-one coaching as well and healing and stuff like that, helping them. And a load of people nominated me for a few awards. So there's a magazine, a very well-known magazine called Global Woman Magazine, and I was nominated and won and awarded for Global Man of the Year for contribution to humanity. And then there was another organization called the International Association of Top Professionals. And they gave me 2 awards, one CEO of the Year for my coaching company, and then as well as that, International Healer of the Year, where they stuck me up on Times Square on the NASDAQ board, just basically saying thank you very much because I helped a lot of people, in particular in that one, which was ladies as well. Also, back in 2017, actually, I did a lot of kind of charity work where I put together mindfulness and meditation and positive thinking webinars, which I did within my organization that I was working with, but also for other people as well. And I took all the money that they, because I charge people, but I gave all of the money to the homeless. And that got recognized by the Global Goodwill Ambassadors Association. And I was made Global Goodwill Ambassador from a senator over in the US, but for Ireland, for Dublin. And then the final one was I was speaking at the Institute of Directors Global Convention. It was on sustainability and climate change. And I was the main keynote speaker there, and they gave me an award for the speech as well. So they're the five. And look, it's very nice to have these accolades, but really it's about seeing the changes in people's lives and the effect that you can have by coming from your heart to help them in that way.
So exactly, how did you go from a career investments into becoming a motivational speaker?
Yeah, great question. So I was in the investment world, selling mutual funds and hedge funds for 21 years. And then in 2008, as I'm sure everybody remember, the markets went through the floor and we lost a lot of money. There was people that had to be laid off. Obviously, Lehman's and other companies, big companies like that went bust. And the feeling and the energy within all the financial world was terrible, absolutely awful. And at that point, I felt it myself. I was fine in terms of my performance, but I felt it myself, and I was watching friends of mine walking out the office with boxes. So at that point, I ended up getting stressed, as most people did. But the stress led to ailments and stress-related ailments and doctors and specialists, and then two operations that went wrong at the end of 2009. And then at the end of that, then I spent 3 or 4 years with chronic pain in my stomach, which was not pleasant whatsoever, waking up sometimes 10 times in the night. Then in 2013, I got a stomach bug called the norovirus, which is a pretty awful one to get. And that led to 10 days of serious dehydration and then an ambulance being called because of heart issues. Rushed to hospital. ECG did set harsh, blood pressure doubled. And at that point, then I was rushed down to X-ray and I actually passed over. And I was encapsulating this amazing feeling of love, energy, and connection, nothing like I've ever felt before. And I was having this spiritual experience, this near-death experience. And obviously, I came back, otherwise I wouldn't be speaking to you here today. And at that point, I felt I needed to change my life in some way or form. And it took a little bit of time, gradually building up the business on the side. Initially, started doing healing to selfishly heal myself, but then realized about the mind-body connection, and then got into life coaching as well, and mindset coaching to be able to help people, enable people. Because quite often in energy healing, we can heal the person. Like we all have the ability to heal, right? So we can heal a person, but then they go back into the same habits and mindset, and they recreate the same stresses and the same ailments as well. So that's why I thought it was really important to study the mind side of things and the emotional side of things, as well as that spiritual side of things as well. So that's why I gradually then I got offered a radio show. I spoke on radio for 5 years and interviewing amazing people like we had New York Times bestsellers, film stars, sports stars. And I interviewed them really to understand what made them successful in life, not necessarily money, but in life, and then to be able to utilize that to help more people as well. And so that's how the transition really happened. And it's been an inspiring, journey and it's still a journey to be able to go along and try and help as many people as possible, touch as many hearts as possible, and get people to go from that journey from the head to the heart, so they come from a place of love rather than ego.
So, do you have any like challenging moments in your career that you would like to share with everybody?
Well, we all do. And I think, one of the things obviously in the corporate world is it can be very competitive, especially in the investment world as well. So although I performed very well, it was in the newspapers for my performance, there were times in my career where I came across either bosses or colleagues who were highly competitive. And, I'm not a political guy. I'm a guy who just gets things done and lives by the results, not by trying to, play politics. So I didn't like that part of the business whatsoever. But sometimes when you get up to a higher level in terms of C-level exec, that can come into play. And that wasn't me. So that was one kind of challenge, I have to say, to be able to, play with. But then the other side is when you come out of the corporate world and you've been earning X 100,000 for a few years and you get used to that and then you suddenly go down to zero, suddenly it's a big differential in terms of waking up in the morning and not having a steady income coming in. You need to really go out there and have your cap on of constantly looking for business and constantly trying to add value to people all the time and being very aware of that. Because if you slack in any way, you're not going to make any money that month. So it's very important to make sure that you're consistently trying to add value to people and consistently trying to look for new clients and consistently work with people at a consistent basis where you really do create results and create changes and transformations in their life, so that then they'll refer you and talk about you to other people as well. So I would not tell anybody to go out there and just become a coach or consultant when you've got a steady job, unless you built it up on the side first, unless you have some extra income coming in on the side first, and then gradually move out and maybe go part-time to begin with, and then eventually, if you feel that you have enough money coming in, then full-time. Because money is still important, right? Even though I don't focus on it now like the way I used to. For me now, it's more about purpose and adding value to people's lives. But still, you need to pay the bills. So you don't want to put any stresses on yourself. So that would be one. I have to say, it was a bit of a stress to begin with, of that sudden realization that I was living off savings for a few years, especially when I came out of the corporate world in 2018. And then obviously it was 2020 when we went into 2 years of COVID. So yeah, I would you never know what's around the corner. So always make sure that you have a little stash on the side if you're ever going to do these big moves.
Yeah, that's funny that you actually mentioned about starting off on the side, because that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
I love it. Yeah, and I think that's brilliant. I think someone in the law enforcement arena like yourself, who it is a high risk job in one way or form, and I think it's great to have something on the side. And I think there's more and more people who are realizing that, and having their passion projects like you are here on the side, hoping to build that up. And I can see already you're building up really well, and hopefully that'll continue as well.
So thank you, Mr. Gordon. Yeah, because like when I'm actually at work, and then I have my senior officers or some of my coworkers approach me, and then I tell them that I was in Seattle or Orlando, or I was just in Sacramento a few months ago doing a show, and then I tell them these things, and they're just so used to hearing like the robotic answer. I was just at home doing nothing, which is the complete opposite. The problem that I see from time to time is, if I make money from social media, that means I'm not actually at work like I'm supposed to be, which is kind of, but you also at the same time have to balance your actual work with your side work.
Actually, that's a really good point, because I think in this day and age, the way with people with social media, people can have a passion that they really, really love doing outside of work. And it could be exactly what you do, for example. And I can see that you've got a good following on YouTube. And obviously, you can start making money out of that. But let's face it, in the old days, people went to church every Sunday, and see people still do. And they're passionate about standing up sometimes and helping people and doing a sermon or something like that. And an office can't tell them not to do that. So this is your passion and this is your purpose. And if you're doing it on the side because you love doing it, they should embrace it, in terms of knowing that, this guy has got a real sense of purpose and passion. And this is the kind of people that we want, these entrepreneurial, think outside of the box type people that we want in the corporate world or the government world or whatever it is. So I think you're amazing. And I think it's, more people should be doing what you're doing as well.
I'll give you a funny story. It's funny now because it's already been like a year or two. But I remember when I first started the show, and I ended up going to California, and then my flight got canceled, and I was supposed to be back at work like the next day, and there was no flights whatsoever, so I had to take the Amtrak track. I had to take the train from California to San Antonio, Texas, just so I can go from San Antonio to Austin. And I had to call to my senior officer telling them that I'm riding a train to Texas. And they're like, "What the hell is going on over there? Where are you at?" And I had to explain to them that, and they were not a happy camper at all.
Yeah, yeah. I look. Some people don't understand it. I think there's a lot of people in the old-fashioned world that are still quite institutionalized, and also I think we are taught as kids, or the education system in most schools is still quite archaic. It's a process of putting children through school so that they go into a job where they work for someone else. But I think people forget, and people sometimes in the large corporate world and government world kind of say, "Oh, we don't like the entrepreneurs as much. We want to, have people working for the big organizations or the government or whatever it is." That's fine, but people forget that Microsoft was once started by an entrepreneur, as was Facebook, as was Apple and Tesla. And without the entrepreneurs like yourself and myself in the world, I think the FTSE 100, which is basically like the S&P 500, but over here in the UK, was started up in 1984. And there's only 26 countries of those, 26 companies of those 100 still in existence now. So companies are going to come and go. And it's very, very important for the world economy that we continue to encourage entrepreneurship so that we can have this continued positive economy that we have. And this is what you're doing. This is what I'm doing. And this is what we try and need to get everybody doing. And by having that mindset of maybe making something on the side, it's actually going to create more positivity for people. And people are maybe in the corporate world worried, oh, he's going to go off and do something by himself. But actually, if you enjoy your job as a police officer, and then you're still doing something to keep you in money and of the lifestyle that you want on the side, you're going to continue it. Whereas if you're not making enough money in the police officer's role, you might be starting to look at other things. And that's why I think we should encourage these throughout the whole of the world.
I also wanted to ask you about a leadership lesson. Like, what are some of the key traits that you see as an effective leader now these days?
Well, one of the most important traits I feel, and I was talking about this yesterday, I was doing a webinar in terms of leadership, is the move. I mentioned about the move from the head to the heart, but also in leadership, there should be the move from the old fashioned command and control, where it's almost like motivating people with the carrot and stick approach, to a sense of inspiration and trust, where you're trying to get people to that sense of why and that sense of purpose, where they're aligned to something that they really believe in, so that they can understand the energetics of what they're doing and how it adds value to that granny or grandpa, mother, father, brother or sister, or son and daughter in some way or form. So as a police officer, you're actually, you're helping increase safety within the community. You're allowing, the law to be put in place to make sure that nobody does anything that can harm anybody else. So you are creating better lives and a better community and a better environment to be able to live in as well. So that's a sense of passion and purpose. But sometimes people don't think about that. They think they're just going to become a police officer to make money and maybe have a bit of fun because it's an active kind of job. But there's a lot more to it than that, and you're really saving lives potentially as well. So it's, as a leader, it's to get into that state of emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? There's 5 key parts to it. Number 1 is what I just talked about, that sense of self-inspiration or self-motivation, but as I said, I prefer inspiration. Self-inspiration to be able to get you to do what you want to do in life, and that's emotional intelligence. Also, it's about self-awareness or awareness in general. So it's understanding in terms of self-awareness, what are your triggers, traumas, and parental programs that might sabotage you in a job as a leader. So are you maybe controlling? Are you maybe wanting to be right all the time? And by having that sense of awareness about what there are, you can then have a look at that and then self-improve as a leader. So good leaders tend to be very self-aware. But in terms of awareness, they're also very people aware, situational awareness, market awareness, client awareness. And even in big organizations, they need to have divisional awareness, understanding that maybe you might have the finance department has one agenda, the operations has another agenda, and then the sales has another agenda. So you need to understand that they all have different agendas, they have different time sets, and you need to work together in a collaborative environment rather than competitive environment. Because in the past, a lot of leaders have tried to create a lot of competition within the business. And where there's competition, it's like going for the same thing. It's almost a sense of lack. Whereas if you're in a state of collaboration, you can create new things from nothing by working together towards those collective goals. And that's why awareness comes into that. Also, as the leader, it's conscious communication skills, which is part, again, of emotional intelligence. And that's to be able to consciously engage with the right words to be able to uplift your staff, to be able to, and your clients as well, to be able to really bond together as that team. Because there are going to be different people. And let's face it, in relationships, there are so many different people that see things in different ways. I always say that we're a product of our parents, preachers, teachers, and past relationships and experiences. And we all have our different goggles in terms of the way we perceive the world. And actually, that's a beautiful thing, because diversity inclusion means there's going to be more angles in the problems to give better solutions for the answers. But at the same time, that can sometimes breed a sense of different ways of communicating. So what happens is quite often as old-fashioned leaders, they sometimes make assumptions and assume, and when you take that word assume, you make an ass out of you and me if you break it down, they assume that other people think, speak, and act in the same way that they do. And nobody does, because we're all brought up in different ways. So it's very important as a leader to really ask questions from your staff, from your clients, from the people that you work with, to understand how they think, speak, and act, and work to that in the way you communicate as well. And then you can get really conscious communication and two-way communication as well, where you're really actively listening to your staff, listening to your clients, so that you can put the best front forward in a collaborative manner. On top of that, another part of emotional intelligence is empathy and compassion. And that's really putting yourself in the shoes of the client, really putting yourself in the shoes of your staff and your team and everything like that. And I think in the past, we might have had some leaders who would be quite narcissistic and they bombard their way up to the top, and they're very intelligent people and very driven people, but they sometimes leave a bit of carnage behind them in terms of the way other people who've worked with them feel. So by being much more conscious and empathetic towards your staff, it can create a much better environment going for the long term, and you'll probably lose less staff and have much better staff retention as well. And then the final part of emotional intelligence is self-regulation. Because let's face it, we're all going to get emotion and commotion at times with either clients or colleagues because we work closely together. And it's to be able to act as a leader in emotional times and almost put yourself as the observer of these emotion and commotion situations up on like a 10th floor, looking back down into the situation rather than getting wrapped up in the situation. And by that, you can look at the situation with a different perspective, with no emotion, and ask yourself, what am I learning here? What is this situation really bringing to me? And how can I emotionally intelligently look at this situation, get the best possible win-win for me, my staff, my clients, or whoever it may be? So they're the kind of ideas that I have in terms of being the best possible leader that you can.
Yeah, maybe my SOs should read your book, and maybe they can learn a little more about how to be better leaders within the agency that I'm working for.
It's all in there. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, we all in an organization, whether it be in the police, whether it be in a corporate like Facebook, Meta, or whatever, we're all holding a sense of energy, and the leader really needs to bring with the vision everybody together at that collective energy towards that vision. And actually, the word leadership is it's all about relationships, and you can break that word relationship down into three different parts. There's a ship that goes in a direction, and ships generally go port to port. So if you imagine that your mission statement and goals align to that mission statement and tasks aligned to those goals are your direction of the ship, you need to make sure that you relay, in terms of breaking that relationship word down, relay your shuns, and they could be expectations, intentions, through communications and presentations to get your staff and your clients on board the ship traveling in the right direction. And that can really be very powerful if you can do that.
Mm. So I wanted to also ask you about mental well-being. How do you incorporate it in your coaching and training sessions?
Well, so it's funny, isn't it? I was saying in a presentation yesterday, it's amazing how when you can be in the office and you might go into an office room and you see two people in there that you can just see they've just had some kind of argument in some way or form. And you can feel the tension in the room, and almost like you feel like turning around and running back out. And that's obviously energy that you can feel. And it's the same on the flip side. You might have a really busy week in work and it can be quite stressful. And at the end of the week, you might have some kind of function to go to in the evening on a Thursday or Friday. And you don't feel like going, but you turn up and you make a pact for yourself. You're maybe going to leave by about 9 or 10 o'clock. But you end up having a fantastic time. The vibe is amazing. You end up dancing your socks off on the dance floor and you feel great the next day. And that is energy, right? And everything in life is energy. Thoughts are energy. Speech is energy. Thoughts lead to speech. Speech leads to actions. Actions leads to habits. And habits leads to destiny. And mindset and mental health is key for success in business and success in life. Because if you have a look, say, for example, in business, let's just talk the business side of things, how it links into mental health. It's all about the results. And the results that you get in business and in life come from the actions that you've taken, and they come from the decisions that you've made, and they come from the habits that you've created, and they come from your mindset. and the way you think, speak, and act. So if you can really work on your mindset and work on your mental well-being, that'll really help you overall, because your energy, your physical, emotional, mental, even spiritual energies will be so much stronger. And let's face it, if you wake up in the morning with loads of energy, positively thinking, blood flow going, you're going to get more done in less time and less stress. You're also going to be better in your relationships and better in life entirely as well. So how do we do that? How do we get the mental health to the highest level? Well, and it is really important. By the way, the cost of mental health problems on the workforce is over $1 trillion worldwide, so per annum. So it's massive. So it's so important to be able to do that for you and your staff as well. So in order to do that, we really need to help our staff to be able to get into a better state. And there's lots of ways you can do that. Obviously, everybody talks about gratitude, the attitude of gratitude and everything like that. And one of the reasons why I think it's so important is because I've got 2 children. If I give them a present and they're not grateful, I don't feel like giving them anything else. So if you're not grateful for everything that you have in your life, the good and the bad, because you created both, because you put yourself in that situation, you can blame other people. And there is a blame culture. But I always say when you blame other people, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So when you take responsibility for yourself, your change, your mental health, then you might find the people around you change as well. Because either they'll leave because your vibe attracts your tribe, or they'll perceive you in a different way and treat you better, if that makes sense as well. So we need to take responsibility for our own self and stop blaming other people. Because even you might say, because when I find people get into this personal development, they realize, oh my God, I'm like my parents, my parental programs and my problems. It's all their fault. But actually, maybe it was, but they were just doing the best they could do with where they were. So draw a line in the sand, don't blame them, and just move on and accept them for that where they are. You can't necessarily change them, but you can change you. And maybe your guiding light of changing you might just help them. So if you can look at, going back to that gratitude thing, if you can look at all the goodness and badness in life, and I truly believe that this world we live in is as good and bad and dark and light and everything like that. We all go through dark times and fun light times. But if you can realize that maybe there's a balance in life, in all aspects, to give a sense of differentiation of experiences in life, that maybe when you're going through some dark times, some tough times, maybe you're almost leveraged up and owed a few good times if you look at it in that grateful type of way, if you look at it as learnings rather than real lessons, if that makes sense. So by being grateful for all you have, you potentially can open your subconscious mind and your own self up to receive more to be grateful for. Whereas if you're complaining all the time and you're in the energy of complaint all the time, you could potentially bring more to complain about as well. So I say, put yourself in the energy of what you want and you'll create more of it. It's amazing. I met somebody the other day, a rugby player, really great guy. And then, I'm walking down the street and I see another really great rugby player. And it's amazing how when you put yourself in the energy of something, you'll bring more of it to you. So if you can really get yourself into this best state, mental health wise, it can really help. And, the things I mentioned, gratitude, I always say meditation is very powerful because you can calm yourself down, listen to your breath. You can also use meditation to visualize yourself being happy, visualize your goals as well, to put yourself in the energy of them as well. And meditation has been proven to reduce stress and increase energy as well. And then exercise. Exercise is so important, as we know, to get the blood flow. There was a doctor the other day in another podcast, and he was saying those people who are slightly overweight, that overweight nature is going to bring more toxins into the body. It's going to bring less blood flow to the brain. And actually, this neuroscientist guy who was on the Lewis Howes podcast, he's saying, look, if you are overweight, it has been shown in the brain scans to reduce the size of your brain. So very important to keep the exercise up, keep the blood flow going, get the toxins out of the body, eat well. The other thing I would say in terms of mental health is I heard it's very important to get out in the morning first thing and get into proper sunlight. It's no good being inside, even with the sun shining through the window. Get out into sunlight and allow your eyes to feel the light. See the light. Don't look directly into the sunlight because you might blind yourself. But at the same time, if you can really get into the sunlight, it can increase the serotonin levels and help you. And it's very important to do that early in the morning when you first wake up, rather than later in the day. Because if you do it later in the day and you're stuck indoors all morning, it can actually have effects toward depression over the long term. So very important to get that. Obviously, sleep. Everybody talks about sleep. Very important to be able to rest. And eating well, you are what you eat. They say your cells are changing all the time, and your cellular structure is made up from what you put back into your body. So make sure that you're eating lots of vegetables. Also, make sure that you're diversifying your vegetables, because let's face it, you have all these good bacteria inside you that need to be fed with different types of nutrients. So you might say, oh, I'm a really good eater. I eat broccoli every day with rice and fish. Fine. But if you're just eating the same thing all the time, you're not going to get those different nutrients. So, make sure you put in broccoli one day, carrot the other day. And they say to try and have 10 different food types every single day with lots of nutrition in a way. So they're just a few ideas in terms of helping you with mental health.
So I wanted to move on and ask you about your best-selling book. What motivated you to write the book, and what message do you have for the readers?
Yeah, so I went through the near-death experience. I went through a divorce. I went through my own ups and downs because I had two operations that went wrong, and it left me with serious chronic pain. Javier, like I was being punched in the stomach all the time. And I was waking up in the middle of the night. I was doing desperate things to try and get rid of the pain. And that caused anxiety, it caused stress, and then in the long term put me down in the dumps, which causes depression, right? So I then went and I literally did a PhD in, this is my own research, in nutrition, alternative medicine, healing modalities, everything to try and help heal myself. And between, I would say, 2008 and 2013, I probably would have been gone to the doctors maybe at least once a week, maybe twice a week. Since 2013, when I got into all the stuff that I have in my book now, I've maybe been 5 times up to 2025. So what that really shows is that when you have good mental, resilience, mindset, and mental wellness, and you're practicing it with a state of discipline and consistency, it's amazing how fit and healthy you can keep yourself. And I felt, having gone through this mess, I wanted to turn my mess into a message and give it meaning to help other people in some way or form. And I felt it would be not good karma for me to go through that and not try and share it with other people. So my book is fully intended to try and add value to people. So it starts with, how can we find that sense of purpose? And I talk about, 4 different ways how to find purpose. And I have a TED talk as well, which talks a little bit about it as well. Then it goes into having a look in a state awareness of your triggers, traumas, parental programs, and how can we self-improve, to increase our emotional intelligence, which I was talking about earlier on. And I have techniques and methodologies within my book of how you can increase your emotional intelligence, how you can improve your awareness, and how you can become a better version of yourself. Then, because I'm into the energy side of things, the energy healing and all that kind of stuff, we obviously want to wake up in the morning with the most amount of energy. So I give tricks, tips, and techniques to be able to help people energize themselves, get into a better state, think more smartly, and everything like that. And then on top of that, the thing I mentioned earlier on, that causes the most joy in our lives, but also can cause the most stress in our lives, is our relationships. And that includes with oneself. So I talk a lot about how you can improve the relationship with yourself, how you can improve self-love, self-esteem, self-confidence, so that you can get into a better state, so you can actually project what you want to project. Because most people in life who are hurt, who were abandoned, who weren't loved as kids, they have hurt inside them, and then they project that out to other people. Hurt people, as they say. So if you can get yourself into a state of love, then you can project that out to other people as well. So I talk a lot about techniques in terms of that. I have acronyms in there in terms of I have make it happen in life, make a better relationship, which is
Mhm.
mindset, actions, knowledge, energy. I have another one which is glean your inner light, which is goals, gratitude, grounding, gamify life, and giving to others. Learning and letting go, emotional intelligence and energy, authenticity and affirmations, and meaning and meditation. All of those to try and get yourself into the best possible state. And there's a load of other ones as well in there. So lots of tips. I also, obviously, as I said earlier on, I interviewed over 300 different people on my radio show in terms of top CEOs, sports stars, film stars, New York Times bestsellers, to try and understand what made them successful in life and in business. And then I took the tips, tricks, and ideas that I understood from them and put them in the book as well. And I obviously mentioned the people as well. So all of that is encapsulated in the book with the intention behind the book. As you can see, it says, charge yourself up for success, energizing your life, work, and relationships. So it's not just about success in work, it's success in life. And that's what I'm really trying to help people do. And my aim, I am grateful. I put, you always say I am grateful statements as if they're in the present moment. So I am grateful for selling 100 million copies of this book to touch 100 million hearts and change 100 million lives for the better. I always say, make your I am grateful goals about adding value to people rather than just selfishly about yourself as well. And that is my goal in that as well.
So I remember you mentioned your actual show. Do you have any memories or moments that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many amazing. One of my favorite guys, actually, who's been on the show 5 times, and well, there's 2 guys I remember. So the first one, a very good friend of mine now, is called Jack Daly, and Jack, phenomenal speaker. He speaks about sales and sales leadership, and a lot about mindset as well. And he told me that at 59, I think it was, he's 76 now. 59, he first started doing triathlons and Ironmen. And he'd been doing marathons all his life. And he'd done a lot of marathons. I think he's done over 100 marathons now at 76. But at 49, 49, or whatever it was, when he started doing the Ironman, he couldn't really swim properly at all. He could do the breaststroke, but he couldn't swim properly. So he had to teach himself to swim. And obviously, in the Ironman, it starts with a long swim. So he would tell me, and he'd tell me that he'd get out of the water, and it was very easy to find his bike because he was one of the last people there. And then when he got on the bike, he'd obviously he'd be very fit, so he would catch up with people. And what he loved doing, it was actually 49. And what he loved doing is he was up against these 25-year-olds, and he'd be cycling after them. And they always used to kind of wear these shorts, and on their calf muscle they'd have their age on there, so that people knew who they were, and they could put them in different age categories. And
Mm.
he'd go up and he'd be flying after this guy, who maybe kind of he can see ahead of him 32 or something like that. And he'd take him on the inside. And just as he was passing him, he'd make sure he'd stretch his calf out a little bit more so they could see the 49 that he was leaving them behind from. So what I loved about him is that he took lessons from the Ironman and put them into life lessons in terms of endurance, in terms of mindset, in terms of practicing and the importance of practicing. Because a lot of people now can go on YouTube, right? And they can get all the information that we're talking about now on podcasts and everything like that, but they don't actually practice it. They think they are. I mean, like, there's a lot of coaches out there that have suddenly become coaches. They were working at whatever, they got the coaching badge, and suddenly decide they're some kind of super duper coach because they've read all the books. But some of them haven't lived it and really, really lived it or practiced it. They may have read about cold showers or cold plunges, but they may not have done maybe more than 5 or 6 themselves. And it's really important to make sure that you live what you talk about every single time. So he was something that he really had lived it, and he really talks about living it. And still now, at 76 years of age, having gone through brain cancer and beaten it, he's now out there living the dream, still doing his runs. He does 10Ks most days, all this kind of stuff. So he's fantastic. The other guy who I love was John DeMartini, who was in the Secret film and Secret book, which is the Power of Manifestation book. John spoken all around the world. He's an amazing guy. If you haven't seen him, look on, I think it's Netflix, or I can't remember, whichever it was. The Secret film is still on there now, and you can see him on there. And he talks about, he always says, if you think about it and think about it, you'll bring about it. And what that really means is that it goes back to what I said earlier about gratitude. You are what you focus on. And the more you focus on positive things, the more you'll bring them into your life. The more you focus on negative things, you bring those into your life. And I'll give you a real life example of this. My daughter, and it's in the book, by the way, as well, my daughter during the pandemic, it was 2020 summertime, and I'd broken up with a girl about 3 or 4 months before. She was, I think, 13 at the time. My daughter said, Daddy, we need to go out and get you some new clothes so you can go on dates and find yourself a new girlfriend, because I'm divorced. And so she took me out, and we did that. We had a lovely daddy-daughter day and all that kind of stuff. And she said to me on the way back in the car, we were getting the car, it's kind of like an hour back to her house. And she said, Dad, I love you. But I have to say, the energy stuff that you talk about on stage, I think it's a load of rubbish. And I said, Sarah, well, let's put it to the test. Let's see if it actually works. I said, and we stopped the car, and I said, I want you to visualize a friend of yours from school that you haven't seen for a while because of COVID. And I want you to visualize her getting in touch. And I want you to say, I am grateful that her name was Emily, actually, this girl. I'm grateful that Emily will get in touch. And she did. And she said it out loud. I said it out loud at the same time. We visualized it. And then we went on home. And an hour later, whatever, we got home to her house with her mum. And she went in. And I was going to wait for my son to take him out to throw a ball around with him. And as I was waiting, she came out and she looked at me in this amazement. And I said, "What's up, honey?" And she said, "Oh my God, Dad, I can't believe it." She was kind of pissed off. She said, "I can't believe it. I have a letter here that was delivered, Mum told me 10 minutes ago from Emily," and completely out of the blue. So what I'm saying is that when you put yourself in the energy of something, you can bring more of it to you as well. And actually, another example of that, I was speaking at the Institute Directors Global Convention, and I was surrounded, it was actually for India, and I was surrounded by these amazing Indian people, like the Foreign Secretary of State of India, and the CEO of Cobra Beer and all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking about my daughter at that time. I hadn't seen her in a couple of weeks. I was thinking I'd love her to reach out. The convention was actually about sustainability and climate change. And I left the convention at the end. I was one of the main keynote speakers. Went down to the airport at Heathrow, London, and got on the plane, sat in the window seat. And within 2 minutes, this guy came down, sat next to me, and he had a little daughter on his lap. She was 1. And I was on my phone. And she started reaching out. So daughter reaching out. And I love kids, so I was playing with her, saying hello, and then got chatting to him. And I said to him, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, actually, I'm a sustainability and climate change consultant." And I was like, "Wow." And then he introduced me to his wife, who was in the aisle seat, who was Indian. So what I'm saying is that really, if you put yourself in the energy of something, you're going to create more of it. So be very conscious of that in terms of your mindset and mental health as well.
So, do you have any upcoming projects you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I've got a few things actually. So my aim in life is really to try and, this is why, getting on platforms like this, being able to share the message, to be able to help more people in any way or form is one of my passions. And I love it. I'm so grateful, Yami, for you reaching out, and thank you. And, the
Oh,
opportunity to
you're welcome. You're welcome, man.
yeah, because like you've got a different audience than mine, so I might be able to touch a few people's hearts, and that's my aim. And always, my aim in life, I always, before I go on stage, before I come on these things, I put my hand on my heart. And this is something that everybody should do, by the way. Even when you're going into a board meeting or a difficult, chat with a friend or whatever it might be, is put your hand in your heart. And I would say, "I am Doug Gordon. I am my heart. Please let me connect with the hearts of the people I'm about to speak to in order to bless rather than impress and add as much value." And what you're doing there is you're setting the intention of getting out your head self into your heart self to come from a place of love. So if I make a mistake in what I'm saying, it doesn't really matter because I don't care, because I'm just trying to add value to you guys who are listening. And by coming from that energy, people feel it, right? So, my aim is to get on as many podcasts, to get on as many stages, as any form possible, to be able to share a message to help people live better lives, happier lives, more fulfilled lives in a state of better positive mindset and better mental wellness in any way or form. So if anybody has a stage they'd like me to come and speak on, I'm always delighted to do that. So that's one of my aims. The other thing, I work with a lot of companies, so obviously, I'm trying to help, professionals perform to the highest level, but also perform. I have a key message in everything I do, which is high performance success without the stress. And I think that's so important because I went through the high performance, got accolades and newspapers and magazines and all that kind of stuff. But if you get stressed along the way, it's not worth it. So it's very important to make sure you do something that really fulfills and lights up your heart. And if I can help people get into their heart selves as much as possible so they follow their true passion and purpose, then that can be a really fulfilling end of my life, looking back at 94 or whatever years of age, looking back with no regrets whatsoever. And I think, I want to be there at the end of my life, whether it's 94, 100, whatever. I don't know these days. We might live to 150 by the time you and I get there. And I think it's very important to look and how many people's hearts can you touch? Because nobody's going to ever look back and go, "Oh, I got loads of money, I got loads of houses or whatever." They're going to look back and what are the relationships I built and whose life did I have some kind of positive impact on? And that's the most important thing for me. I do have one project which, if anybody's interested, I have an idea which I actually put past a Shark Tank guy, well, Dragon's Den over here in the UK, the other day, and he loved it. Now he's retired from Dragon's Den, but he's a friend of mine, and he absolutely loved it. He's a testimony in my book, and it's an idea of basically taking a clothing brand with symbolization of love and positivity. And I'm not going to mention what it is because I'm actually getting a trademark at the moment. But the idea is bringing love and positivity, almost wrapping people up. So, in terms of mental health, it's trying to help mental health people. So if you give this jumper or polo shirt or t-shirt to somebody, it symbolizes wrapping them in love, in an intention. And that's what I'm looking to do. So that's something that I'm doing on the side. Whether it takes off, who knows? The Dragon's Den guy, he did say that could be $1 billion business. So we'll see what happens. But that's something that I'm have on the horizon as well.
Well, hopefully that works out.
Thank you.
Hopefully. So what advice would you give an individual who is looking to improve their leadership skills as well as performance skills?
Yeah, look, if you look at, I think it's on Netflix, Bill Gates, it's Inside Bill's Brain or something like that. And he is carrying around with him, he tells people, I think 3 books every week, and he's reading 3 books every week. And knowledge is key in life. And if you're not learning, you're not growing. And so many people leave organizations and companies and their jobs because they don't feel they have that growth. They just feel they're living Groundhog Day every single day. But if you are really working on your personal and professional growth through learning and reading different books or listening to podcasts, and then actually implementing the actionable and practical steps that they're giving in those books and giving in those podcasts, then you'll feel a sense of growth, and that'll really help you. And I always say you learn to earn. And also, look, even the best people in their profession have coaches to learn from. I think, Tiger Woods, Ronaldo, the footballer, they're the best of the best, but they have a coach. They have someone to train them and help them, because sometimes we don't see what's in ourselves. So the biggest thing I say in terms of improving your leadership is to really, really look all the time in a knowing state that you're not the finished product, to be humble in that sense, to learn to grow. And you can learn from everybody. I went over to India and I went to meet the Dalai Lama because I thought he'd be the guru that I met over there. But actually, while I was there, the taxi drivers, the hotel managers, everybody I talked to and really showed a general curiosity for life. And I think leadership is about curiosity for other people in terms of what they've lived through. You can learn something from everyone in this world if you really ask the right questions and understand that we all go through this life in different ways and different means and have different experiences. So as a leader, if you're out there, and sometimes people go through, very successful, and someone said to them, you should write a book, and maybe you could write a book. And, you might think, everything that I know, everybody else knows already. There's no point. I wouldn't be doing anything different. Well, maybe, but at the same time, you've got a different perspective on it. You've had different experiences on it. And your energetic feeling of what you went through is different than everybody else. Somebody put a post up the other day on LinkedIn, I think it was, saying that, what are the jobs that are going to disappear now that AI and ChatGPT and all this kind of stuff's coming out? And one of them was writers. I don't agree with that, because ChatGPT and AI can only base their stories on previous people's experiences and stuff that's already on the internet or already out there. Whereas if you've got a unique story that's completely unique to you and the way you went through it and the emotions that you actually felt, because no AI can feel that, then you can relay that out. And as a leader, it's remembering to be your authentic self as well, so that you bring that out in a kind-hearted, loving, supportive way. And remember, I would say love is an acronym for lots of vibrant energy. So if you can get yourself into that state of lots of vibrant energy with everything we've been talking about in this podcast, then you're going to bring a much better person to the leadership camp, if that makes sense as well. So learning, continuous growth, continuous trying to learn from other people, and continuous attitude of service rather than trying to get something out of other people, if that makes sense. And that'll help you be a better leader.
It does. It is. A lot of people need to be better leaders. A lot of people need to just take the opportunity to take the next step, which a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, I know. I think some people, it's amazing. They go in, let's say, like what I would be in at the start. I was like a customer service executive when I first went into the investment world. And then I got into sales support, and then I got into sales itself. And then I got sales management, then sales director, then head of sales and marketing, then board director. And during that time period, there's some people, and me at one stage as well, was thinking, I'll be happy when I get there. And they get there and they're not happy. And then they think, I'll be happy when I get to there. And they get there and they're not happy. And there's this constant void within them where they think that something of power or leadership will really, really make them feel better. And it never does. And then sometimes as leaders, then they project out that unhappiness when they get there as well. Because some of them, especially if they're really good salespeople and they love being around people all the time, and they suddenly get stuck in the office all the time, they might not be the best leader, the best manager. So it's really about getting yourself into the best state of service for everybody that you meet. And when you come from that energy of giving rather than trying to take, you might just find yourself being a much better leader.
Yeah, I got a little funny thing for you. A lot of the times, since in corrections, a correctional officer, a lot of times they end up being car salesmen. If you can believe it. It sounds weird when I say that, but when I sit there and I was having a talk with on another show, they were sitting there talking to me about like, well, what do they do? One of the things that they do is that, well, they become truck drivers, which you make good money, but you're always working. And then when I mentioned that they become car salesmen, they kind of laughed at the notion. But then I was telling them, well, when you spend your entire career talking to inmates and offenders, talking to people and trying to sell them the dream becomes very easy.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think, I was in sales. Well, we're all salespeople. Like, let's face it, you're going to be,
Mhm,
after this, you're going to be putting this on YouTube or wherever, on Apple, on Spotify,
mhm,
and you want to sell it to people. And obviously, I'll help you as well. So, we're all salespeople. And I think, something like that, being in a prison and, also have to kind of sell yourself as a personality, not to get beaten up or abused or whatever in the prison, is a skill in itself. And I think I'm only 5'8", and I went to a sports university. They did engineering as well, so I studied engineering. But I also played
mhm.
top level. I played top level field hockey. Played for the first team with internationals, all that kind of stuff. But I was small compared to most of the people because there's rugby players and American football players there who are like 6'4". So as a guy who was, as a youngster, you're chasing girls, and you have to learn to sell. You have to learn how to sell yourself when you're 5'8" relative to the 6'4" guy. And whatever it might be, whether you're the inmate who is in prison who needs to sell for his life every day, or the small guy who's trying to catch a beautiful young lady as his girlfriend. Sales can help in terms of that. So I'm not surprised that they ended up becoming car salesmen, because they would have had a lot of skills that be able to help.
It's kind of funny though when I mentioned that part, people kind of get a giggle out of it because like they don't become car salesmen. I guess they do. And somehow they end up becoming car salesmen, or they end up becoming top sellers, if you can believe it. Like one of my closest friends, because I'm actually located here in Austin, and he lost his job at the correctional facility. So he became a tech salesman. And now he makes over 100K. And he's like, Hob, you got to do this. And I'm like, I tell him whatever I want. I'm like, bro, you've always been telling him whatever you want. Like you've been
Well,
selling the dream before you even knew you were selling the dream. It's like,
absolutely, and that's what it is. It's sales is about people, about communication, about presentation skills, and relationship skills, relationship building skills. And I've always, because I actually train people in sales now, and I always say, never ever ever try and make a quick sale. All my, I've been out of the industry in terms of the hedge fund and mutual fund industry now for what are we now, 8 years, and yet
mm,
on Facebook and Instagram, I am still friends with the ex-CEO or CIO, Chief Investment Officer of UBS, or, the head of Bruin Dolphin, all the biggest, people in terms of investments in the banking world, the stockbroking world. I'm friends with them, genuinely friends with them. And that comes down to creating long-term relationships and setting that intention rather than trying to get something out of them, if that makes sense. Because the best
it does.
salespeople are the ones that make their long-term relationships.
So I wanted to ask you about how do you balance your professional commitments with your personal life? Like, is there any times where you gotta tell your daughter, look, daddy has to go to work, he has to go do these things? Because there's times when I have to tell my stepson that kind of stuff when he wants to come to the house. But of course, like now he's old enough to where he's actually I don't really I could still consider him my stepson, but he's really playing more of like a brother, little brother role because he's already much older and he has an understanding. But there's times when I tell him when he was a child that, hey, I can't go here. I have to go to work. When there's an emergency, I have to they no longer feel like we're abandoning them because we have to go do what we're supposed to do as men. Like, how do you balance the difference between your professional commitments and your personal lives?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, and it's tough for a lot of guys. If I go back to probably a good thing is to give two perspectives. So if I go back when I was still married and I was working in the corporate world, I would always, I'd leave in the morning. I'd be in work for kind of 8 a.m. and I would try and leave reasonably promptly at about 6, maybe half 5, even sometimes, to try and get home. It took me an hour to get home. Try and get home to see the kids, spend, eat with the kids, spend time with the kids and make sure that I'm there for them as well. And luckily, if there was something special on for the kids, I did have generally good bosses, but also because I performed well, they were lenient enough to let me go out and say, okay, it's much harder in your job, obviously, as a law enforcement officer. But in my job, it was as long as you're performing, you have a target in place for your team or yourself. And if you're well on the way in that, they're very happy to help you spend time with your family. And I think that's very important. If you can perform to the highest level in your job while you're there, focusing on it while you're there, and not just focusing on, because a lot of people, when I was working, they'd go in there and they chat and they conversation and all that kind of stuff. And they play the politics and they played it so much they wouldn't actually do their job. Whereas if you do your job properly and prove and that you're actually getting the results, then you'll probably find a bit more leniency within your organization to be allowed to spend more time with the kids. But I would always try and go to the kids, athletics days or sports days if I can. And then at the weekends, obviously spend as much time with them as well. Now, having changed and obviously become an entrepreneur, business owner, and everything like that, I do work every hour under the sun, but I am divorced. And because I'm divorced, I only see my kids maybe once a week. But if they have got something on, I will always make sure I prioritize to go and see them, in it because yeah, your kids are only going to be with you really till they're 18, and then they're heading out. They're doing their own thing. They've got the girlfriend, the boyfriend, whatever. They don't want to see you as much. So there's a small period or small window of time where you can really spend time with them and really get to know them and have that with them, and it's that is precious. So I do prioritize that. I'm living in Ireland. I was offered a massive job doing what I'm kind of doing, but with probably the leading guy in the whole world in terms of performance and coaching and all that kind of stuff. And it was a very attractive job, but it was in America. And until my kids, my kids are 16 and 19, until they're both grown up and out of college, I don't want to start traipsing anywhere else because I want to be close to them, spend time with them, and love them. So, very grateful for my kids. And, if we have that attitude of gratitude for our children, but also have a emotionally intelligent way of balancing our life in terms of working hard and playing hard and really, getting on well with our bosses and our colleagues, there's going to be leniency put in place because everybody knows now that, there's girls, sorry, there's women and men working now and there needs to be a balance to be able to look after that family. And I think people are a bit more aware of that. There are organizations still where that's not the case. But if you're a really hard, good worker and you work smart rather than long hours, then you can spend time with the family.
So I have one of my last questions is who is the most influential person in your life?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say in my early days, it was obviously my dad. Everybody has their dad is their superhero. My dad was amazing. I mean, he still is amazing, but he was so dad was an orphan. So his dad died when he was 2, and his mum died when he was 6. And he's put into boarding school, pretty rough childhood, no money whatsoever in the family. But he made it. He was a clever guy, worked hard, got into the best college or university over here in Ireland, Trinity, and then got into a good job, made himself, retired a multimillionaire. And, to be able to go from nothing to great success is a good mentor to have. And don't get me wrong, he can be tough on me and challenge me. And he wasn't exactly pleased when I left the corporate world to set up my own stuff. And, at times we had our differences of opinions, but we get on great now. And, so he's probably been, the person that has been a great mentor for me. In the corporate world, I remember there was one guy, his name was Campbell Fleming, and he was one of the best CEOs I've ever came across. He'd worked at Merrill Lynch, he came across to Columbia Threadneedle, and what I loved about him is that he treated the janitor in exactly the same way as he would treat the board. And that to me is a really good value, to treat everybody, because you don't know where people have come from, what they've got going on, and you just don't know how clever they actually could be, but they've just decided, whatever circumstance in their life, that they're following that path. So we should never judge people by how much money they have or anything like that, because we don't know their backdrop. Now, if they're lazy, it's a different thing, but a lot of the time it isn't that. People are just trying to do the best they can do in what they have, if that makes sense. And I don't believe there's natural laziness. I just believe that the person is not following their true path that connects to their heart. Because there are kids, for example, that if you give them a PlayStation game that they absolutely love, they'll play it from 7 o'clock in the morning to 3 a.m. at night. So, if you get the person doing something that they truly enjoy doing and love doing, they'll never be lazy about it. So that's the one thing. And probably in the kind of coaching and corporate training kind of world, I've got a few that I love. I mentioned Jack Daly earlier, love him. I love John DeMartini. He's passionate about what he does. Tony Robbins, obviously, everybody loves. He's a great guy. And probably someone else who you may not know, there's a guy called Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he wrote hundreds of books. Well, not hundreds of books, but loads of books. One of his books sold over 50 million copies. And he was a real guy where he mixed psychology and spirituality to help people get into the best possible state, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And his books are amazing. And I really recommend him. So that's Wayne Dyer, D-Y-E-R.
Thank you. So is there anything else you would like to add before we actually end the episode?
No, look, please, anybody listen to this, get in touch, link in with me on LinkedIn. It's Doug Gordon on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram would be actually better because my Facebook's just about full up. But Instagram, you can get me at Doug D. Gordon, Gordon, and I'd be delighted to link in. And, if there's anything I can help people with in terms of, as I said, I do energy healing with people in America while here in Ireland, and it works. I do a lot of coaching all around the world. I've coached Star Wars actresses. I've coached sports people over in America. I've helped people all around the world in terms of that. And I also have spoken on many stages doing talks, either on leadership, either on sales, high performance success without stress, anything like that. So if there's anybody that needs an inspirational speaker or corporate trainer or coach or anything like that, get in touch. I'll be delighted to help. And if you do want to find my book, it's in Barnes & Noble, it's in Walmart, it's in all the shops, and obviously on Amazon as well. Be delighted for people to pick up a copy of that as well.
So just so you know, Mr. Gordon, all the links and descriptions for everything is going to be on the descriptions for the YouTube channel, as well as LinkedIn. Not quite X, but we're going to put something on X. That way everybody knows exactly where to go to get your book, and as well as they can find you.
Sounds fantastic, Abby. I really appreciate it. It's been absolutely brilliant. Love the questions, love your energy, and love what you're doing. And I hope it keeps going in the right level in terms of upwards and onwards.
I hope so. I hope so. Because every time I keep posting, people keep watching.
100%.